I am a very kind and sympathetic person. I am ready to help even those people who do not seem to deserve it. That's how I am. I do good for free and do not expect reciprocal help, but reciprocal help came at exactly the moment in my life when I did not expect it. Enjoying watching, I heard her cry out in distress. Almost immediately, the sound reached my ears, prompting me to sprint out through the rear exit. Before delving further into my narrative, there are essential details that you must be acquainted with to grasp the moment when the course of my life became evident. To begin with, my name is Lucas Martin. Among friends, I go by Luke, while my parents use Lucas unless I find myself in trouble or they require my full attention, then they refer to me as Lucas. I am an only child to caring parents. Though we reside well below the middle-class threshold in America, while not exactly impoverished, we live in a humble abode on the outskirts of Philadelphia. Alyssa, my next-door neighbor, has been in my life for as long as I can recall. We share a history, both being single children existing within the same socioeconomic status as I've described for myself. The sole exception is her father's struggle with heavy drinking. During the period I'm recollecting, Alyssa is 11 and I am 13. Alyssa and I have spent countless days and nights in our backyards. As dusk settled, we would perch along the fence dividing our yards, backs pressed against each other. It felt as if we were safeguarding one another from any potential harm. We could sit for hours discussing anything from our favorite colors and preferred dog breeds to our aspirations for the future. Alternatively, we would sit in silence, absorbing the neighborhood as night gradually enveloped it. We were the closest of friends. On the pivotal evening that would profoundly impact my early life, I found myself in the kitchen, engrossed in my mother's discourse about something I had done or forgotten, when the piercing scream of Alyssa shattered the air. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, marking the transition from evening to night. Ignoring my mother's attempts to detain me for a lecture, I dashed through the back door upon hearing Alyssa's cry. "Alyssa!" I called out urgently while sprinting toward the source of the commotion. Surveying her backyard, I observed Alyssa's father advancing towards her with a belt already in hand. Vaulting over the fence, I swiftly positioned myself between Alyssa and her father, determined to shield her from whatever he intended to inflict. Though the details of how I surmounted the fence eluded me, my focus remained unwavering on Alyssa's father. Positioned in defiance, I braced myself for whatever he had in store. Noting the unmistakable signs of his inebriation and his unsteady gait as Alyssa's father approached, I stood ready to confront him. With a swift motion, he reared back and struck out with the belt. I managed to raise my arms in time, absorbing the blow on my forearms. Despite the stinging pain, I stood firm, refusing to yield my protective stance. "Stay behind me, Alyssa. I will save you," I declared, anticipating another onslaught. The second lash echoed with the same intensity as the first. Amidst the chaos, my mother's desperate pleas for Alyssa's father to cease his actions resonated. Glancing at my mother on the other side of the fence, Alyssa's father momentarily diverted his attention. Seizing the opportunity, I lunged forward, grabbing hold of the belt. A brief tug-of-war ensued between us. Although Alyssa's father possessed greater strength, the influence of alcohol in his system allowed me to hold my ground for a fleeting moment. Just then, my own father emerged from the house, clearing the fence and intervening by tackling Alyssa's father. All of this unfolded within a span of a few minutes. Alyssa sat on the ground, tears streaming down her face, while welts began to appear on my arms. My dad had restrained Alyssa's father, delivering a couple of swift punches. It was the angriest and most worried I had ever seen my dad. Alyssa's mom rushed out of the house, embraced Alyssa protectively, and berated her husband. I distinctly remember her declaring that this was the last time, repeating it over and over. As the adrenaline subsided, I sank to the ground, sitting there in a daze. The situation progressed as my dad released Alyssa's father and escorted him out of the gate into the front yard. Meanwhile, my mom guided me to our house, and Alyssa, along with her mom, retreated into theirs. The following days were subdued. One morning, I noticed a truck in their driveway, and Alyssa's mom packed boxes into the back. I signaled Alyssa to meet me in the backyard. What's happening? Are you moving? Yeah, we're moving to Michigan to stay with my aunt. Mom is furious with my dad and believes it's best if we leave, so I won't get to see you again, Luke. I don't know. I don't want to go, but my mom doesn't want my dad to repeat this. And that was the general course of events for the next day or so, Alyssa packing to leave, and me grappling with the prospect of losing my best friend. The words I shouted at Alyssa's father during our confrontation have echoed in my mind throughout the years, becoming my personal mantra. The promise I will save you served as my inspiration to excel in all aspects of life. Driven by the belief that Alyssa would someday need rescuing, it was my duty to fulfill that obligation. From grade school to college, these thoughts guided my academic pursuits. Although I had an affinity for numbers and excelled in mathematics, it wasn't until a high school accounting class that I discovered my true passion. Numbers took on a new significance in accounting, sparking a passion that eventually became my college major. Upon graduating, I swiftly joined a prominent accounting firm where my career took an unexpected turn. Assigned to support a newly established private equity firm, MKT, I delved into their financial records, quickly grasping the intricacies of their operations. Specializing in acquisitions, MKT recognized my ability to analyze merger results and their impact on the bottom line. Subsequently, they recruited me away from the accounting firm to lead one of their acquisition teams. Progressing through the ranks, I eventually assumed the roles of CFO and then CEO, achieving this career trajectory in a surprisingly short time. My knack for swiftly assessing the financial viability of potential acquisitions played a pivotal role in the company's success. As profits soared, I ascended to the CEO position, succeeding the previous, older CEO who supported my advancement through his stock options. While I maintain regular interactions with him, this aspect is not crucial to the narrative. Shortly after joining MKT, I crossed paths with my now wife Megan. Our relationship evolved over a few years, and we eventually tied the knot shortly after I assumed the role of CFO. Megan, an attractive blonde with alluring curves, stands at 5 feet 5 inches and weighs around 125 pounds, possessing perfect C-cup breasts with highly sensitive nipples. I find great pleasure in indulging in their allure, which always seems to drive Megan wild. Although our initial intimacy was vibrant, it has gradually tapered off as we've aged. During our 7 years together, 4 of which we've been married, while children are on the horizon, we have yet to start a family. As my professional success grew, Megan shifted her focus towards volunteering with charities and engaging in various social endeavors. Her active involvement has not only elevated our standing within the community, but also led us to frequent attendance at numerous evening charity events. Walking into these gatherings with Megan on my arm is a source of pride. She effortlessly compliments her little black dress, catching the attention of several gentlemen in the room. Around 6 months ago, I enlisted the services of FM to locate Alyssa. After relocating to Michigan, I lost touch with her during high school and college. Financial constraints prevented me from actively searching, and the absence of social media further complicated the task. Realizing the need for professional help, I engaged a firm with the necessary resources to trace Alyssa in Michigan. Although the process took longer than expected, the firm eventually provided me with a comprehensive dossier containing all the information I had requested. I quickly skimmed through the information and discovered that Alyssa had relocated to Youngstown, Ohio, following her marriage to a man named Gabe Sayre. Alyssa had been married for a little over 2 years and had a 1-year-old daughter named Aaliyah. The report didn't mention whether Alyssa had a job, but Gabe worked as a mechanic at a small garage in Youngstown. It appeared that they had recently moved to the area around the time Aaliyah was born, as Gabe had been at his job for just over a year. The house they lived in was a rental and didn't seem to be in the best part of town. Judging by what I observed, it seemed like they might be facing some financial constraints. After thoroughly reviewing the report a couple of times, I decided that a road trip was in order. The drive to Youngstown was approximately 6 hours, so I planned to go on Friday and return on Sunday. I informed Megan that I would be out of town for the weekend. She didn't seem too concerned, but I thought I detected a hint of a smile that was quickly suppressed. On Friday, I rose early, packed a bag, loaded it into my Maserati Quattroporte, and set off for Ohio. I enjoyed driving this car, but had never taken it on such a long journey before. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to test its performance. I arrived in Youngstown in just under 5.5 hours. The car handled the drive exceptionally well. With music playing, the miles passed by quickly. I was excited to reconnect with Alyssa, and it looked like today would be the day I could reunite with my childhood friend. I arrived in Alyssa's neighborhood and drove towards her house, parking along the street. I observed that the house was not in great condition, the fence needed repair, and the lawn had not been mowed for quite some time, featuring mostly weeds with a bit of grass that also needed watering. In the yard, I noticed a few toys, but there was no car in the driveway. The place appeared almost abandoned, with no lights on or signs of movement inside. Approaching the front door, I knocked. My heart sank when the person who answered did not match my expectations of Alyssa's current appearance. She was exceptionally thin, bordering on unhealthy, her unwashed hair and worn thin clothes painting a disheartening picture. To make matters worse, I noticed numerous bruises on her neck and arms. "Hello, Alyssa. Do you remember me, Luke? Is that you?" "Yes, how have you been? I lost track of you after you moved to Michigan, but I managed to find you through public records and a bit of detective work." "Oh my gosh, I must look like a mess. I haven't cleaned up this morning and was getting ready to feed Aaliyah. Aaliyah is my daughter. She is just over a year old and is the joy of my life. It's wonderful to see you, but would you prefer if I returned a bit later? I don't want to intrude. I was so thrilled to locate you that I didn't consider how my arrival might be an interruption. How about I come back later this afternoon and treat you and your family to dinner tonight? My treat. I need to book a hotel room anyway since I planned on staying in the area for a couple of days. What do you think?" I'm not sure my husband would be keen on going out to dinner. He values his privacy, and we don't dine out often. I'd love to meet him and your daughter, but I don't want to impose." I handed her my business card. "Why don't you give me a call when you think it's best for me to visit? My cell number is on the card. You decide the time and place, and I'll be there. I usually take Aaliyah to the park in the afternoons. How about meeting me there around 1:30? We can take a stroll for about an hour, and then she usually naps in the afternoon." "That sounds perfect. I'll meet you at the park." I gave Alyssa a quick hug. "It's great to see you, Alyssa. I'm looking forward to catching up with you this afternoon." As I left, I couldn't help but feel that my life had taken a better turn than Alyssa's. I vowed not to judge her situation until I had more information, but I already had a sense that she might need my assistance. I located a few hotels and found one not too far from Alyssa's house, but in a slightly better neighborhood. After checking in, I found a diner to grab a quick bite and noticed they had a variety of cookies. Intrigued, I ordered half a dozen to go. Glancing at my watch, it was nearly 1:30. I settled the bill and drove to the park Alyssa mentioned for our gathering. Pulling up, I spotted Alyssa pushing a stroller on the sidewalk. Though Aaliyah was too young to actively play, she sported a smile as her mom pushed her along. Aaliyah seemed to share her mom's features. From my vantage point, carrying the box of cookies, I walked towards the two of them. "Oh my gosh, Alyssa. Aaliyah looks just like you." "Do you think so?" "She has my hair color and eyes, but I also see a lot of Gabe in her." "I don't know Gabe, but there's no way I could mistake who her mother is. She is beautiful." "Thank you, Luke. Is there somewhere we can sit and talk? I brought some cookies for you and Aaliyah. I hope that wasn't inappropriate." "Thank you, Luke. Just like old times, looking out for me. The cookies are great. Hopefully, there's a sugar cookie in there for Aaliyah. That's her favorite." "There is, and I made sure there was an oatmeal raisin as well. If I remember correctly, that was your favorite growing up. Is it still?" Alyssa laughed. "How did you remember that?" I remember almost everything about you from when we were kids. We used to talk quite a bit as we sat in our yards. Those are some of my favorite memories until that fateful night. I never forgot you, ever. Looks like you've done pretty well for yourself. Your card says CEO, and you're driving quite a remarkable car. I've done okay for myself. I've been married to my wife, Megan, for just over 4 years now. No kids yet, but hopefully soon. I'm the CEO of a private equity firm that acquires other companies and merges them into our operations. Life has been pretty good, no complaints on my side. How about you? Not much to tell after moving to Michigan. I graduated from high school and started dating Gabe. We got married 2 years ago and had Aaliyah. She's now just over a year old. We moved to Youngstown around the same time as Aaliyah's birth. Gabe works as a mechanic in a garage owned by one of his high school buddies. There isn't much else to tell. We chatted for the next few minutes, and I suggested taking them out to dinner again. Alyssa politely declined, but we agreed to meet at the same spot tomorrow morning, since Gabe would be at work, as the garage operated on weekends. Since Alyssa had walked to the park, I offered her a ride. However, lacking a car seat, she graciously declined, giving me a quick hug before pushing the stroller back to her house. Later at the hotel, I grabbed a quick meal at the restaurant and checked my work emails. I had been waiting for a report from my CFO, Jeremy King, on our latest quarter's earnings, but it was delayed once again, marking the third consecutive time. Frustrated, I texted Jeremy to inquire about the delay. With no immediate response, I finished reviewing other items, closed my email, and made a note to discuss a formal warning with HR regarding Jeremy's recurring tardiness. Despite the early morning visit with Alyssa, sleep came easily. The next day, I woke up early for a brief workout at the gym, striving to stay in shape amidst my hectic schedule. Satisfied with my efforts, I headed to the diner from yesterday for breakfast, enjoying coffee, a light omelet, and some fruit. Before leaving, I ordered 2 cinnamon rolls to go, thinking Alyssa and Aaliyah might appreciate them during our park outing. After settling the bill, I drove to the park we had visited the day before. Glancing at my watch while waiting for Alyssa, who was more than an hour late, anticipating her route to the park, I drove towards her house. Not spotting her on the way, I parked at her residence and approached the door. My first knock went unanswered, but on the second attempt, I heard movement inside. The door creaked open, revealing Alyssa. Sorry, Luke, for missing our park visit. It's not a good time. Aaliyah isn't feeling well, and I don't want you to get sick. Maybe we can meet later if she feels better. I'll call you. Through the slightly opened door, I noticed another bruise on Alyssa's face. I couldn't determine if there were more, but it seemed to be the main reason for her absence. Alyssa, what's happening? I don't want to pry, but I can see the bruise on your face. I want to help. Please, just talk to me. Luke, please leave. I promise I'll call you later, Alyssa said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Alyssa, let me help. I can't leave knowing you're in trouble. You know me, I can't abandon you in this situation. Please. Alyssa opened the door, revealing additional marks on her arms, probably concealed under her clothes. I embraced her, allowing her to cry. After a few minutes, Alyssa explained that Gabe had recently started abusing her over minor issues. His temper flared unexpectedly, and he had begun drinking often, returning home drunk, as happened the night before. We need to ensure your safety and Aaliyah's safety by leaving this place. Pack your belongings, and I'll take you to my home for a while. I can't do that, Luke. I'll talk to Gabe and sort things out. We're just going through a rough patch. He's a nice guy. Last night, he saw the cookies and asked where they came from. I told him an old friend dropped by and left them for us. He accused me of cheating, which triggered him. I didn't have a chance to explain who you were this morning before he left for work, but we'll talk when he returns tonight. It'll be okay, Luke. Alyssa, think about Aaliyah. Reflect on your father and how things began when you were a child. Situations like this don't just improve, Gabe needs help, but you must ensure Aaliyah and you are in a safe place before we address Gabe. I can't leave you here. We debated this for the next 15 minutes or so before Alyssa broke down crying again and started packing for herself and Aaliyah. Since Gabe had left the car seat at the house, I set it up in the back seat of my car. We loaded as much as we could into the trunk and headed to my hotel. After gathering my belongings and checking out, we left for Philadelphia. The return trip took longer as we stopped a couple of times to feed and change Aaliyah. Alyssa slept initially, but she opened up to me about her situation with Gabe for the rest of the journey home. It was heartbreaking to hear what she was going through. When we stopped to change Aaliyah, I noticed Jeremy had finally responded to my text from last night. He assured me that I would receive the reports first thing Monday morning. Despite suspecting he might be lying, my reply was simple: they had better be there. Quickly, I texted Megan to inform her that I was on my way back home and that we would be having guests. Since I hadn't discussed much of my past with Alyssa with Megan, I knew I would have to catch her up when I got home. I hoped Megan would understand why I couldn't leave Alyssa in this situation and that there was no way I could abandon her without trying to help. As we approached Philadelphia, I explained to Alyssa that I hadn't mentioned her to Megan before because at that time, I didn't know anything about her. Reflecting on it, I should have mentioned where I was going and why, but I wasn't going to second-guess myself. I would deal with the consequences with Megan upon arrival. When we pulled into the driveway, I could see that Alyssa was impressed with the size of our house. I lived in a 2-story, 5-bedroom, 4-bath house with over 7,000 square feet of space, more than enough room for Alyssa and Aaliyah. We parked in the garage, and I began unloading all of Alyssa's bags and the items we had packed from her house. "Megan, are you home?" Seeing her car in the garage, I assumed she was. Megan came down the steps and paused as she saw Alyssa and Aaliyah. I could see the questions on her face as she waited for me to make introductions. "Megan, this is Alyssa and her daughter Aaliyah. They will be staying with us for a little while." Megan greeted Alyssa hesitantly. "Alyssa, let me show you to your room and feel free to settle in. I will bring up the rest of your bags in a little while. Megan and I need to talk." I escorted Alyssa to her room, which had an attached bathroom. After closing the door, I descended the stairs to locate Megan, finding her seated in the kitchen. I fetched the water from the fridge and took a seat across from her. "I assume you're curious about why I brought Alyssa and her daughter Leah into our home. Let me clarify and address any questions you may have. Firstly, Alyssa and I aren't romantically involved, and Aaliyah isn't my daughter. I want to address that up front. I've remained faithful to you, and I have no intentions of changing that." I proceeded to recount my childhood, explaining our neighborly connection with Alyssa. I detailed my last interaction with her father, my promise to ensure her safety, and the steps I took to locate her in Youngstown. I emphasized the urgency due to the abuse she endured, making it impossible for me to leave her in that situation. "So, Megan, what questions do you have for me?" "Luke, why do you believe it's our responsibility to support her after all these years? I could understand getting her help from protective services or a women's shelter, but we know nothing about this woman. What if her husband finds her here and poses a threat to us? I acknowledge the risks, and I'll consider ways to ensure everyone's safety. As for the why, I can only explain it as a commitment to keeping her safe that I made mentally when I was a kid, and it hasn't wavered over the years. I feel the same obligation to keep you safe, but my love for you is different. Alyssa is more like a younger sister to me, she's family, and I need to protect her. I hope you can understand, as that's the best way I can explain it." Megan seemed to somewhat accept that explanation. "Megan, hosting Alyssa temporarily is a short-term arrangement. I intend to assist her in finding her own place and help her secure a job to support herself and Aaliyah. Just give me a few weeks to organize everything. I can see that you're determined to go through with this, so I'll do my best to accommodate her. Please understand the potential impact on our lives. Let's keep this arrangement as minimal as possible. Let's make Alyssa feel welcome. I'd like to spend some time getting to know our new roommate. Thanks, darling. I appreciate your understanding." I hugged and kissed Megan briefly. I carried the rest of Alyssa's bags to her room. Alyssa, why don't you take a bath or shower? I'll look after Aaliyah while you freshen up. Join us when you're done, and we can grab a meal together so you can get to know Megan. I took Aaliyah to the living room, and Megan and I played with her while Alyssa cleaned up. In the following week, we settled into a better routine. I suggested Alyssa use the SUV if she needed to go anywhere and left one of my credit cards for her personal and Aaliyah's needs. Megan accompanied her on a shopping trip for new clothes, replacing the worn-out items she had. Alyssa enjoyed cooking, so she took charge of the kitchen. Each evening, I returned home to a meal prepared by Alyssa. Megan, not much of a cook, was more than happy to leave those efforts to Alyssa. A couple of days after my arrival in Philadelphia, I attempted to reach out to Gabe. It was evident that he was aware of Alyssa's departure with Aaliyah, but I wanted to provide an explanation and offer assistance if needed. When we eventually spoke, Gabe was intoxicated and confrontational over the phone. I conveyed to him that if he hoped for a future relationship with either of them, he needed to seek help, control his anger, and address his drinking. Frustrated by the escalating argument, I ended the call. I shared my conversation with Alyssa to determine the next steps. I presented the option of divorce and assured her that I would support her financially if she chose that path. Staying true to my promise to Megan, I began searching for a permanent residence for Alyssa. I discovered a 2-bedroom apartment nearby with reasonably affordable rent. While it would take time for Alyssa to cover the full rent independently, it was a goal she could work towards. Recognizing that our company needed a new receptionist and considering Alyssa's skills, I suggested she apply. I didn't use any influence to secure her the position, and she earned it after a couple of interviews. Alyssa was thrilled to have her first real job. A daycare facility near our workplace accommodated Aaliyah while Alyssa was at work. In a few more weeks, they would move into the new apartment, starting a new chapter with some financial assistance from me. I believed Alyssa's situation was improving, but unbeknownst to me, a significant change was looming in my own life. Days before Alyssa's move, I noticed her gaze at me differently than usual. Though subtle, I sensed something was bothering her. I followed her into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and asked, "Alyssa, is something on your mind?" She gestured to be quiet, mouthing later, and then responded, "No, nothing's wrong." I returned to the living room and engaged in casual conversation with Megan while we awaited the completion of dinner. Later, I offered to assist Alyssa with the dishes, leaving Megan to retreat to our bedroom for some TV. "Okay, now that we're alone, what did you want to talk about, Luke? I'm unsure how to express this without causing you distress, so I'll just be direct. Rip the Band-Aid off, right? Alyssa, just tell me what's going on. I can't address the issue until I know what it is. I think Megan is cheating on you." I never anticipated hearing that from Alyssa. It took me a moment to catch my breath. "Why do you think that?" I overheard a phone conversation she had with a guy named Jeremy, Luke. I might be mistaken, but it really sounded like they were planning to meet. Megan mentioned needing to see him since it had been a few weeks since they last got together. It sounded like they were together the weekend you came to get me from Ohio. Damn, I know which Jeremy that is too. He works for me at MKT. That could also explain why his report was late again. He was spending time with Megan instead of finishing the reports. Shoo, you don't want her to hear you. I don't have proof, but I know what I heard, and it sounded like they were planning to meet this weekend. Were you planning on being out of town? Not out of town, but I have a board meeting that we had to move to Saturday due to some travel issues for one of the members. I'll be in the board meeting most of the day, plenty of time for them to get together. Jeremy isn't part of the meeting, as I handle all his reporting requirements. I'm sorry, Luke. I considered not telling you, but I couldn't do that to you, especially after everything you've done for me. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Thanks for letting me know. As painful as this is, I appreciate you telling me. At least I can make some plans. I headed to my bedroom and informed Megan that I felt the need to go for a walk. It wasn't an uncommon practice for me, as I often used walks to process work-related problems or challenges. It gave me a break from being at home. I realized I had to maintain my composure until I had solid evidence of whether or not she was cheating. One advantage I had was the prenuptial agreement Megan and I signed. With my rapid advancement at MKT, our internal legal team advised me to have a prenup as a precautionary measure. The agreement stipulated that in the event of a divorce within the first 5 years, the cheating spouse would leave with minimal financial assets. There were provisions for years 6 to 7, and any divorce due to infidelity after 7 years resulted in a 50-50 split. Since we didn't have children yet, I didn't need to worry about those aspects. During my walk around the neighborhood, I decided to contact the investigation service I previously used to locate Alyssa. I arranged for them to follow Megan, especially on Saturday, with multiple operatives ready to switch if necessary to avoid detection. I also had them keep an eye on Jeremy, just in case. I strategized a few other contingency plans in case Alyssa's suspicions were accurate. Now all that was left was to patiently wait for a few more days to confirm the truth. To maintain appearances, I reached out to a moving company to assist in transferring some items to Alyssa and Aaliyah's new apartment. Although they didn't have much at my place, we had accumulated enough over the past few weeks to warrant storage. The plan was to have the truck pick up the items from storage and move them into the apartment on Monday. Alyssa could then move in at her convenience throughout the rest of the week. As a precautionary measure, I reached out to a friend who happened to be a divorce lawyer. We arranged to meet for lunch on Thursday, where I outlined my strategy in case Megan was being unfaithful. I wanted him to prepare the necessary legal documents by Monday morning if everything unfolded as I anticipated. Based on my conversation with Alyssa, I was willing to spend the money, even if it turned out to be a false alarm, but deep down, I doubted that was the case. As I wrapped up my Friday reviewing the final presentation and reports for the upcoming board meeting, I decided to play a prank on Jeremy to gauge his reaction. I called him into my office. "Jeremy, take a seat. Let's go through the final reports for tomorrow's board meeting. Have you thoroughly verified all the numbers to ensure they are 100% accurate? Your performance has been subpar in recent months, and I can't afford any mistakes. They are 100% accurate. I checked them 3 times just this past week alone. All right, will you be available tomorrow in case I need to reach you with any questions? Or would you like to join me for the financial presentation?" Jeremy hesitated slightly at my offer. He immediately glanced down at the floor before responding, "Luke, I have plans, but I'll have my phone ready if you have any questions. The board isn't accustomed to me attending the meeting, so I wouldn't want it to cause any issues, especially at the last minute if they were expecting me. I'd be fine with it. Adding me now might raise suspicions or suggest there are problems. Let's not create unnecessary concerns, especially given our performance this quarter. Let's keep the positive financial news as the main focus." "Good point. All right, you can skip this one, but keep your phone ready just in case. I'll make sure to cover all financial matters first thing in the morning so you don't have to wait around for my call." Jeremy left, and I couldn't help but smile to myself. This was all part of my plan. I wanted him and Megan to cross paths and potentially embark on their extracurricular activities, but a part of me also wanted to sabotage their plans. After the evening meal, I discreetly spoke with Alyssa and asked her to message me once Megan had left the house. Additionally, I enlisted the help of a detective service to notify me when Megan and Jeremy reached their chosen location for their activities that night. I initiated intimacy with Megan, possibly for the final time. My intention was to refrain from any further contact with her once I confirmed her whereabouts with Jeremy. My approach in the bedroom was notably more assertive, departing from our usual tender moments. Although Megan noticed I was indifferent in that moment, the following Saturday I rose early and headed to the office to ensure everything was in order for my presentation. The boardroom was prepared, and the staff had diligently completed the finishing touches on all the reports. Taking my customary seat, I awaited the arrival of the board members. The meeting commenced promptly at 9 a.m. At 10:45, Alyssa informed me via text that Megan had just left the house. By 11:15, the detective service confirmed that both Jeremy and Megan had checked into a small hotel with an external entrance. They occupied room 114, which faced the parking lot. During the lunch break at 11:45, I stepped out of the boardroom and called Jeremy. After the first attempt went to voicemail, I dialed again and Jeremy answered this time. "Luke, sorry for missing your first call. I was outside and didn't make it back in time." Although Jeremy was out of breath, it wasn't due to rushing indoors. "Jeremy, I instructed you to keep your phone with you at all times today. There was a question about the tax figures for the last acquisition. Were those numbers prorated or the actual amounts?" It was a fabricated question, but my goal was to interrupt their activities. "They're prorated. We won't have the actuals until later in the year. I may have overestimated a bit to avoid surprises in next quarter's reports. I'll reconcile them then." "All right, keep your phone nearby in case I need to contact you again." After ending the call, I texted the detective service to initiate the second phase. Assuming the role of the hotel manager, I instructed them to have someone knock on Megan's room door, claiming there was a reported gas leak in the building, prompting an evacuation. The service deployed a member with a long-range lens in their car to capture potential incriminating evidence. During the interaction, the person knocking on the door conveyed a sense of urgency about the gas leak. Jeremy, clad only in boxers, answered, and the manager forcibly removed him from the room. Megan, though more decently dressed, was swiftly escorted out. The private investigator's photos effectively documented the situation, providing the evidence needed for the impending divorce filing. After concluding my board meeting, I sat in my office contemplating the course of my future. The office was empty, and I found myself shedding tears for the first time since discovering Megan's true nature. I pondered how this betrayal occurred and where I had gone wrong, struggling to identify any signs of Megan's infidelity. I realized she had ample opportunities, she didn't work, I frequently traveled for my job, and I trusted her completely. The realization left me questioning why she chose to cheat with Jeremy, whom I perceived as inferior to me in almost every aspect. I phoned my lawyer friend to kickstart the legal process on Monday. Planning to have lunch with Megan, I intended to hand her the divorce papers in person, preferring to address any potential confrontation directly rather than letting it linger. I also instructed our HR director to proceed with terminating Jeremy. While I could manage his responsibilities temporarily, there were skilled individuals who could fill the position. The CFO role for MKT was prestigious and could open doors for future opportunities, making it relatively easy to find a replacement for Jeremy. I planned to dismiss him shortly after returning from my lunch with Megan. I informed Alyssa about the situation too. I conveyed that I wouldn't be at home much over the weekend because I wanted to avoid spending more time with Megan. On a whim, I invited Alyssa to visit the office with Aaliyah. I had a crucial question to ask her that couldn't be discussed over the phone. Alyssa requested an hour, explaining that Aaliyah was still napping, and I agreed. I instructed her to text me when she was close, and I would ensure she had access to the office. Alyssa arrived approximately an hour and a half later. "Thanks for coming by, Alyssa. Was Megan back home when you left?" "Yeah, she seemed a bit upset and went straight upstairs. I didn't see her before I left." "I'm really sorry, Luke. I know this must be painful, but I couldn't ignore what I overheard." "Alyssa, I appreciate you telling me. It took a lot of courage. I never saw any signs of Megan cheating on me. She appeared to be the same person I've known and loved for years. This blindsided me. I guess I had a blind spot when it came to Megan. We all have blind spots. That's why we need good friends to help us see them and fill in the gaps." Alyssa walked over and gave me a comforting and unexpected hug. After our embrace, I was composed enough to discuss the reason I invited Alyssa to the office. "Well, in light of what happened, I have an important question for you. I'd like you to consider staying with me at the house. There's plenty of room for you and Aaliyah. I'd love to have you there. I'd offer the apartment to Megan, but she'd be responsible for paying rent. I'll only make that offer if you agree to the revised living arrangements. It would be two friends sharing our living space. If that seems too strange, just let me know. If you prefer to stay home and look after Aaliyah instead of working and taking her to daycare, that's fine with me. I'd be happy to pay you for all the work around the house, but it's up to you if you want to keep working here. I'd support that too. The house is too big to live in by myself. Luke, your offer is incredibly generous. While I don't want to impose on your hospitality, if you're insisting, I'd love to stay there with Aaliyah. However, for the time being, I prefer to continue working here. It gives me a sense of accomplishment, and I believe it's beneficial for Aaliyah to spend time with kids her age. I'm more than willing to handle cooking and cleaning, but I might need your assistance with some of the tasks. Doing it all by myself seems a bit overwhelming. How about we hire a maid service to come in once a week to help with cleaning? I don't want you dedicating all your time to cleaning when you should be with Aaliyah, Luke. I'll only stay here as long as it makes sense. If things start getting romantic with someone else, I would expect to find our own place for Aaliyah and me. Do we have an agreement that makes sense to you? I'll be meeting with Megan on Monday over lunch to discuss the divorce papers. I plan to offer her the apartment and have a moving company handle her relocation. Instead of moving you and Aaliyah, I've never been through something like this, so feel free to let me know if I'm becoming difficult to live with. I don't want our living arrangement to suffer because I'm being difficult. Agreed, Alyssa said with a smile, accepting my last statement. I reminded myself to check in and ensure I wasn't causing any issues around the house. I informed Megan via text that I would be occupied with work throughout the weekend, returning home late on both Saturday and Sunday. Additionally, I mentioned the need to start work early on Sunday and Monday, while expressing regret that our time together would be limited. I suggested meeting for lunch on Monday to make up for it. Megan appeared to agree, and we scheduled our lunch at a nearby cafe for 11 a.m. on Monday morning. I coordinated with my lawyer to deliver the divorce documents to my office, intending to present them to Megan during our lunch. I also contacted HR to prepare the necessary forms for Jeremy's release from the company. Depending on his cooperation, he would either receive a severance package or face termination without references or additional compensation. My main priority was ensuring his departure from the company and my life. I updated the moving company about the change in plans, instructing them to wait for further instructions. They would either assist in relocating Megan to her new apartment or remain unnecessary. I planned to pack up Megan's belongings and leave them in the driveway, indifferent to her choices as long as she left the house. Arriving a few minutes early for our lunch meeting, I chose a seat in the back of the cafe to maintain some distance from other diners. Megan arrived punctually, looking elegant in a short dress. Despite her efforts, my resentment overshadowed any appreciation for her appearance. Unlike my usual gentlemanly behavior, I refrained from standing or pulling out her chair, as I wasn't feeling particularly hospitable. Thanks for joining me for lunch, Megan. I thought it would be nice for us to connect since we haven't had much time together this weekend. It's a welcome change. I missed you this weekend, Megan. Let's be straightforward. I'll strive to be civil, but we both know you've been unfaithful. I slid the divorce documents across the table in the envelope. You'll find my divorce petition. I received photos last Saturday of you with Jeremy in a hotel room. As per our prenup, infidelity triggers specific consequences. Since we've been married for over 5 years, you'll be leaving with minimal assets, essentially just your clothes and personal belongings. I could discern the astonishment on her face as I revealed my intentions. Megan's complexion turned rosy, and her ears began to redden, clear indicators of her distress. Luke, you can't do this. I love you, you have to believe me. Jeremy doesn't mean anything to me. Please, baby, let's talk about this. Megan, that's a load of nonsense and you're well aware of it. You made a self-centered choice to go beyond the boundaries of our marriage, regardless of the reason. You did so willingly, no one compelled you to make that decision. Through your actions alone, you violated our wedding vows, which carries consequences. I'm opting to enforce our prenuptial agreement, specifying the settlement you'll receive based on the duration of our marriage." Megan was in tears, but trying to maintain composure in the public setting. I eased up a bit for her sake. "Megan, I'll always consider you family. You know loyalty is paramount to me. I can't remain married to someone who shows such disregard for a core value in all my dealings, be it business or personal. I'll always have love for you, and if you ever need me, I'll support you. Even though we won't be married anymore, I've arranged an apartment for you, and the rent is prepaid for the first 12 months. This should give you a fresh start and the chance to figure out how you'll support yourself going forward. Your car is yours, and I'll also provide some money to help you begin anew. It's all unnecessary based on the prenup, but I don't want to leave you in dire straits. I'm so sorry, Luke. I never should have let things go this far. Jeremy definitely pursued me, but I wasn't strong enough to resist once it began. It felt exhilarating. I guess I thought I could keep the affair hidden. Live and learn, as I always say. You have to be prepared for the consequences of your actions. I suppose we both have to live with our decisions now. Goodbye, Megan." With that, I left some money on the table and exited the cafe. Now, I needed to rebuild my life. Upon returning to the office, I instructed my assistant to summon Jeremy to my office while reaching out to HR. I informed them of my decision to terminate Jeremy's employment within the next 15 minutes. I advised them to secure his workspace and pack up any belongings he could take with him that day. As I concluded the call, my assistant ushered Jeremy into my office. "Take a seat, Jeremy. I'll be direct. I'm letting you go from your position at MKT. I appreciate your hard work, but it's time for us to part ways. You have the option to resign, and I'm open to discussing a severance package. Alternatively, I can terminate your employment on our terms and request you to leave. The choice is yours." Wow, I didn't expect this conversation today. Can I ask what led to this decision? I know I've been late with some reports, but I didn't think it warranted termination. Your tardiness was a factor, but there are other issues I can't discuss now. Let's just say that some recent decisions of yours have had a significant impact on my life. It was evident that Jeremy grasped the unspoken message. His face paled, and he avoided my gaze, though my eyes bore into him. I maintained a composed demeanor, allowing the silence to linger as I awaited his response. "Luke, I'll review the severance terms, and if it's a fair offer, I'll voluntarily resign. I'll clean out my belongings and be gone by the end of the day. Thank you for the opportunity to work here. I wish you the best in your future endeavors." With those words, Jeremy exited my office. I couldn't honestly say I hoped to cross paths with him again. While I strive to see the best in people, watching him in my office, knowing about his intimate involvement with my wife, tested my limits. I decided to call it a day and left shortly after releasing Jeremy. All I wanted was to retreat to my home and silently mourn the demise of my marriage. Upon entering, Alyssa and Aaliyah greeted me with warm hugs, offering silent comfort. Even Aaliyah sensed the gravity of the moment as she joined in the embrace. The weight of it all hit me, and tears started flowing. It took a few minutes to regain composure enough to break the hug. "Thanks, I really needed that today. One of the worst days I've ever had." "Anytime you need a hug, just let us girls know," Alyssa's infectious smile reassured. "Luke, I hate to burden you further, but I've decided to divorce Gabe. The longer I'm away, the less sense it makes to stay married. Can you help me with the paperwork?" "Sure, I'll check with my buddy to see if we can get a group rate." I attempted to inject humor. I crossed the room, hugging Alyssa again. "I guess we can mourn our failed marriages together. I'm sorry for you too. I'm here for you, just as you are for me. We'll get through this together." "Thanks, Luke. Your support has helped me through my situation. I have to make the best decisions for Aaliyah, and staying with Gabe doesn't make sense. I'll ask for full custody, and if he wants to see Aaliyah, it'll have to be supervised." I can't have him drinking around her, let alone risk potential abuse. I'll offer him to give up parental rights to avoid child support. If he refuses, I'm ready to fight it out in court. I'll need your financial support for that, Luke. Are you okay with that? Of course. I wouldn't have it any other way. And so our paths unfolded. My divorce was uneventful thanks to the prenup. Alyssa's followed a similar course. Gabe relinquished his rights to evade child support. I kept an eye on him, witnessing his decline with his drinking spiraling out of control. Cutting ties seemed to be the best for Alyssa and Aaliyah. Our lives settled into routine for the next couple of months. Alyssa excelled at work, Aaliyah grew every day, and our evenings became moments to share our days over dinner. Dating was the last thing on my mind as I tried to overcome my failed marriage. I cherished evenings spent with Aaliyah while Alyssa prepared dinner, walks in the park, zoo visits, or simply playing in the backyard. I hadn't realized how domesticated my life had become. I quickly found a new CFO to restore my work-life balance. Jill Fender, highly recommended, seamlessly integrated into her role. In her mid to late 40s, married with 3 kids, she prioritized family, leaving the office on time to have dinner with her crew. I valued her commitment to maintaining a healthy work-life balance and made efforts to respect her personal time. While work-related travel persisted, I enjoyed this aspect of my job, and everything seemed to settle into a new routine. However, 2 months after my divorce was finalized, Megan reached out for a lunch meeting, catching me off guard. Despite the unexpected nature of her invitation, I agreed to meet and hear her out. Arriving on time at a nearby restaurant, Megan was already seated, offering a smile as I approached. "Hello, Luke. Thanks for joining me for lunch. It's been quite a while since we last saw each other." "Hello, Megan. Good to see you too. I must admit I was surprised to hear from you, and even more so with the lunch invitation. Well, you did mention treating me like family, so I thought it's been long enough for us to at least talk as friends, don't you agree?" "Sure, I'd be happy to have lunch with you as friends, with no issues. Just to clarify, it's strictly in a friendly context, nothing more." "Okay, that's all I want. I acknowledge my mistakes in our marriage, and I want you to know that I take full responsibility. You were the best husband a girl could ask for, and I regret not realizing that at the time. So, what did you want to discuss today?" "Well, I'm still involved in several charities, and we have an upcoming auction. I'd like you to participate. We're auctioning off dates with eligible bachelors in our area, and I think you'd be a great candidate. If you're seeing someone, I understand if you decline. But if you're single, what do you think?" "Wow, I'm flattered, but this isn't really my style. I prefer to keep my personal life more private. While I am single, being auctioned off isn't something I'm comfortable with. I appreciate the offer though. Don't be so modest. You're a fantastic candidate. You're good looking, in great shape, and you're always polite. It's just a date, not a marriage proposal. You plan and pay for the date, and it can be as romantic or platonic as you're comfortable with. I hope you consider it and get creative with the date. Can I take some time to think about it and let you know? I need to know by next Monday. The auction is in 3 weeks, and we need your plans for the auctioneer script." We continued chatting throughout lunch, and I gave her a quick hug as I left to return to the office. When I returned home later that night, I had an opportunity to sit down and chat with Alyssa after Aaliyah had gone to bed. Megan invited me to lunch today and presented an interesting proposal. She suggested that I participate in a charity auction for a good cause. While I believe in the charitable aspect, a part of me wonders about her underlying motives. I want to discuss this with you to get your opinion. All right, but do you actually want to do it? It could be enjoyable. I'd have to come up with a unique date scenario, and while on stage, the audience would bid on the chance to go on that date with me. It might be embarrassing if no one bids, so I need to plan an impressive date. On the flip side, a successful bid could boost my confidence. Overall, it could be fun, and the goal is to raise more funds for charity. What's the charity? The funds go towards supporting abused wives and children, a cause I strongly support. I think you should go for it. If you want, I can accompany you, and if the bidding is slow, I can help liven it up, although I doubt that will happen. It might stimulate some competitive spirit among the women. I can also assist with ideas for the date if you'd like. I have a fantastic date idea that I was saving for an anniversary with Megan. I could adapt it for this occasion, keeping it platonic for the winning bidder. The more I think about it, the more inclined I am to participate, but only if you join me. Let's find a sitter for Aaliyah, dress up, and make a night of it. What do you think? Sounds like a fun idea. I haven't been out in quite a while. I'll even pick out a nice dress for the occasion. I think that would be great. I'll let Megan know that I'm on board. I quickly informed Megan that I would be delighted to participate in the auction. Despite my lingering suspicion that Megan might have ulterior motives, the cause was noble, and it was something I had initially discussed with Alyssa and her family. I meticulously planned the details for the event and ensured that my tuxedo was spotless for the occasion. As the auction night approached, I found myself surprisingly excited for the event. My amazement reached new heights when Alyssa descended the stairs in her stunning new dress. Having recovered from her abusive relationship and with the means to eat well, Alyssa had regained some healthy weight, accentuating her figure in all the right places. The elegant black dress struck a perfect balance between sophistication and allure, showcasing her curves flawlessly. Her enhanced confidence was evident, and I couldn't help but feel proud to have her by my side for the evening. Upon our fashionably timed arrival, I had an hour to socialize before heading backstage for the auction. Megan greeted me, appearing somewhat taken aback by Alyssa's presence, but quickly masked it with a smile. Good to see you, Luke, and I see you, Alyssa. Thank you for joining us and being a part of the auction. I'm happy to contribute. If it's all right, I'd like to personally introduce my date when I'm on stage. Can we arrange that? Yes, I think we can make that happen. Come to the front, and I'll provide you with the microphone. After introducing your date, pass the microphone to the auctioneer for the bidding. You're the finale, so make it memorable. We want to end on a high note. No pressure, right? Hopefully, some of these ladies saved some funds for the grand finale. You look fantastic, Luke. There might even be money left for you. Thanks again for doing this. I need to kick things off. Remember to head backstage in about an hour. As Megan walked away, Alyssa pulled me aside. I believe she's considering bidding for your date. Are you prepared for that? You think so? I hadn't considered that possibility, but I sensed she was scheming something. She seemed surprised to see you with me tonight. I can only hope someone else outbids her. I'd rather not go on this date if it's with her. I might be mistaken, but the way she looked at you gave me the impression that she plans to win your favor by bidding on your date. You'd also be obligated to honor the date, making it difficult to turn her down. It's a clever plan from her perspective. God, I hope that doesn't happen. You're right. I would still honor the date even if it's with her. Nothing would come of it, but the date I had planned would be wasted on her. Well, let's hope someone else is feeling generous. Wish me luck. Good luck, Luke. I hope your wish comes true and someone else wins the auction. I went backstage to await my turn. The auction seemed to be progressing well with 15 gentlemen participating. The dates were relatively standard, involving dinner, dancing, and other activities not overly creative but suitable for this type of event. Bidding ranged from $500 to $2,000, good money for the charity. It was my turn, and I felt a few jitters as I walked on stage. Megan announced my name and handed me the microphone to describe my date. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Megan for inviting me to participate in this auction. Please be generous as the proceeds are for a good cause. For my date, it will span 2 days. I'll pick up the winner at their home early in the afternoon, and we'll drive for 2 hours to a quiet resort in Upper Pennsylvania. I've rented a 2-bedroom cabin, and we'll have a chef-created dinner served in the resort's dining room. It's a private chef's tasting menu, so come hungry. After dinner, we'll retire to the cabin where we'll sit by a bonfire, enjoying the stars with wine and dessert. In the morning, the resort will deliver a brunch menu of mimosas, freshly baked croissants, and fruit. After breakfast, we'll drive back to your home where I'll drop you off to continue your weekend. The highest bidder will win all of this, so please be generous. As I explained the date, there were expressions of awe and admiration suggesting a positive reception. The auctioneer initiated the bidding at $250, involving a few women as it quickly escalated to $1,200. A stylish woman then raised the bid to $2,000, attempting to outbid the other bidders. She appeared determined, consistently participating in the auction. The bidding hit a pause until Megan raised it to $2,500, confidently smiling as if expecting no one else to match that amount. The other bidder didn't rejoin, leaving Megan as the sole bidder. Concerned, I realized this might not end well. As the auctioneer was about to conclude the bidding, a voice from the back of the room shouted, "I bid $4,000. The audience fell into stunned silence. The back of the room was too dim to identify the bidder, but I felt an immediate sense of gratitude for the unexpected competitor. Megan turned around to catch a glimpse of the surprised bidder. Although I couldn't discern her reaction, it was evident that she wouldn't be able to outbid any further. As the bidding concluded, a surprised winner approached. My jaw dropped when I realized it was Alyssa. The crowd erupted in applause, except for a visibly infuriated Megan, whose plan had been thwarted by Alyssa. I was relieved not to end up on a date with Megan, but remained curious about Alyssa's motive for bidding on me. The source of her funds also piqued my interest, a question I plan to discuss with her later. Alyssa completed the necessary paperwork and wrote a check for her winning bid. I regarded her with a sense of wonderment about the recent turn of events. Alyssa locked eyes with me and declared, "I'm here to repay the favor. Just as you've saved me in the past, I owe you that and more for everything you've done for me." I'm eagerly anticipating our date. With a nod and a smile, I accepted her gracious offer for our date. Alyssa and I finally went on our auction one date, and it was a wonderful experience. The weekend allowed me to see Alyssa in a new light, shifting from viewing her as my little sister to seeing her as a beautiful woman I desired. We held hands on the way to the cabin, enjoyed each other's company over dinner, and embraced under the stars, reminiscent of similar moments in our past. Despite having a second bedroom, we didn't use it for intimacy as our relationship had evolved, and there was some mutual apprehension. However, the positive changes in our relationship, free from the trust issues of our past marriages, were evident. I trusted Alyssa completely, a trust reciprocated after her difficult marriage with Gabe. Just a few months after our date night, we had a small wedding ceremony, and everything has been perfect since. Alyssa, eager to start a family, is now pregnant with our son. I also happily adopted Aaliyah shortly after our marriage, treating her as my own. In the end, both of us needed saving, and we willingly became each other's saviors.